Rich and racist woman accuses a boy of stealing her $150,000 necklace. Just before being executed in the electric chair, the boy reveals something that immediately shuts her down. The accusation. In the bustling city of New York, where the skyline is dotted with the glimmering lights of countless skyscrapers, lived Eleanor Harrington, a wealthy and influential socialite. Eleanor was known not only for her vast fortune but also for her extensive collection of priceless jewelry, including a unique and heirloom necklace that had been in her family for generations. This necklace, a stunning piece of artistry encrusted with diamonds and emeralds, was valued at over $150,000 and held immense sentimental value for her. One chilly autumn evening, Eleanor hosted a lavish dinner party at her grand mansion located in the upscale neighborhood of Upper East Side. The mansion itself was a testament to her opulence, with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and expansive rooms decorated with priceless art. As the guests mingled and enjoyed the evening, Eleanor noticed that her beloved necklace, which she had been wearing throughout the evening, was missing. Panic set in as Eleanor realized that the necklace was nowhere to be found. The party guests were quickly questioned, and the staff was searched, but no clues emerged. Frustrated and desperate, Eleanor's mind jumped to conclusions. She remembered seeing a young boy, whom she had never seen before, lurking around her estate earlier that day. The boy was part of a group of homeless children who roamed the streets near her mansion. This boy, who had been scavenging through the trash bins, caught Eleanor's attention due to his disheveled appearance and unkempt clothing. Eleanor's suspicions were fueled by her preconceived notions and prejudices against the less fortunate. She had always been wary of the street children, viewing them as potential threats rather than individuals in need of compassion. The idea of a child from the streets being involved in the theft of her valuable necklace seemed to fit neatly into her narrative of distrust. Without any substantial evidence, Eleanor decided to act on her suspicions. She contacted the police, demanding an immediate investigation. The officers, under pressure from Eleanor and her influential social circle, began to look into the matter. They quickly focused their attention on the young boy, who was later identified as David Miller. David, a 14-year-old boy, had spent most of his life on the streets. Orphaned at a young age, he had been forced to fend for himself by scavenging and performing odd jobs. Despite his circumstances, David had always shown remarkable integrity and kindness. He looked out for the younger children in his makeshift street family, sharing whatever little food he had and protecting them from harm. The police tracked down David, who was found trying to sell some old clothes he had collected. When questioned, David was bewildered and frightened. He had no idea about the missing necklace and vehemently denied any involvement in the theft. However, his protests were ignored. The officers, swayed by Eleanor's accusations and the pressure to solve the case quickly, took David into custody. The media, eager to sensationalize the story, portrayed David as a hardened criminal. His image as a homeless street kid further fueled the public's belief in his guilt. As David was held in jail, awaiting trial, the legal system moved rapidly to convict him. The combination of Eleanor's wealth, influence, and the media's portrayal of David created a narrative that seemed impossible to challenge. The public, influenced by the media's depiction, was quick to condemn David. The court proceedings, which were supposed to be a fair and just process, were overshadowed by the overwhelming pressure to deliver swift justice. David's life, which had already been filled with hardship and struggle, took a devastating turn as he faced the prospect of a wrongful conviction. He was overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation and the looming threat of the electric chair. The legal system seemed more concerned with satisfying the demands of an influential socialite than with uncovering the truth. David's future appeared bleak as he awaited the outcome of his trial, with little hope of escaping the dire consequences that seemed to be closing in on him. If you are liking the story, leave your like and subscribe for more wonderful stories. The Trial and the Struggle. As the days passed, the case against David Miller intensified. The media frenzy surrounding the theft of Eleanor Harrington's $150,000 necklace painted a grim picture of the young boy, casting him as the villain in a tale of high society drama. The sensationalism of the media coverage turned the case into a spectacle, overshadowing David's personal plight and the deeper issues at play. David Miller, now in custody, found himself thrust into a harsh reality he had never before encountered. The juvenile detention center where he was held was a world apart from the streets he had known. The stark, sterile environment of the detention center was intimidating, and the constant presence of guards and surveillance heightened his sense of isolation. The other detainees, many of whom had their own troubled histories, eyed David with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. In the courtroom, the trial proceedings were swift and relentless. David's public defender, a young attorney named Jane Collins, was overburdened with caseloads and lacked the resources to mount a thorough defense. Jane had a deep sense of justice and a commitment to her clients, but her limited experience and the pressures of the case made it challenging for her to provide David with the robust defense he needed. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Michael Roberts, pursued the case with fervor. Michael was known for his career-driven approach and his desire to secure high-profile convictions. The pressure to deliver a conviction in such a high-profile case was immense, and Michael's determination to win the case seemed to overshadow any commitment to justice or fairness. His presentation of the evidence was aimed at fitting David into the narrative that Eleanor's accusations had established, rather than exploring the possibility of an innocent mistake or a miscarriage of justice. During the trial, Eleanor Harrington testified with conviction. Her presence in the courtroom was imposing, and her testimony was laden with emotional weight. Eleanor recounted the night of the theft with vivid detail, emphasizing her shock and dismay at the loss of her precious necklace. Her account painted a clear picture of David as the unlikely yet convenient suspect. Her portrayal of David as a street child who had no place in her world resonated with the jury, further skewing the perception of David's guilt. David, seated in the courtroom, felt the walls closing in on him. The once familiar streets of New York seemed a distant memory as he faced the scrutiny of the legal system and the harsh judgment of public opinion. His attempts to defend himself were stifled by the overwhelming evidence presented against him, much of which was circumstantial and based on conjecture. The inconsistencies in his story, stemming from his confusion and fear, were exploited by the prosecution to reinforce the narrative of guilt. As the trial progressed, Jane Collins made efforts to uncover any potential evidence that could exonerate David. She conducted interviews with witnesses and sought out any details that might support David's claim of innocence. However, her efforts were hampered by the limited resources at her disposal and the overwhelming focus of the case on David's supposed guilt. The pressure to convict David, fueled by Eleanor's influence and the media's portrayal, created an environment where justice seemed increasingly elusive. In a twist of fate, the night before David's sentencing, a storm hit New York City. The storm, accompanied by heavy rain and strong winds, caused widespread disruption throughout the city. Power outages plagued several neighborhoods, including the area surrounding Eleanor's mansion. The blackout created an eerie silence, and the city's usual hum of activity was replaced by an unsettling calm. In the midst of the storm, David lay awake in his cell, grappling with his fears and anxieties about the outcome of his trial. Unbeknownst to David and his attorney, the blackout had also affected the surveillance systems in Eleanor's mansion. The security cameras, which had previously been instrumental in the investigation, were rendered inoperable by the power outage. The loss of crucial evidence, coupled with the storm's impact, created an atmosphere of uncertainty and chaos. The blackout underscored the fragile nature of the case against David, highlighting the possibility of unforeseen complications and gaps in the evidence. Despite the blackout, the media continued to sensationalize the case. Headlines blared with dramatic reports of the trial's proceedings, and the public's focus remained fixated on the narrative of David's guilt. The media coverage, combined with the political pressure on the legal system, made it difficult for any new evidence or alternative explanations to gain traction. As David's sentencing day approached, the gravity of his situation weighed heavily on him. The prospect of facing the death penalty, an unimaginable fate for a young boy who had never known true justice, loomed large. The lack of concrete evidence and the potential for a wrongful conviction became increasingly apparent, but the wheels of justice seemed to turn inexorably toward a predetermined outcome. The trial's conclusion appeared imminent, and David's fate seemed to hang in the balance. The public's perception of his guilt was deeply entrenched, and the legal system's focus on expediency threatened to overshadow the pursuit of truth. As David awaited his sentence, the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within, creating a poignant backdrop for the unfolding drama. The revelation and the turning tide. As the days following the trial's conclusion stretched on, the atmosphere surrounding David Miller's case grew increasingly tense. The initial storm had passed, but its aftermath left a lingering sense of unease and uncertainty. In the courtroom, the gavel had fallen, and the verdict of guilty was announced, sentencing David to death. The media buzzed with outrage and speculation, but the reality of David's plight was far more complex than the headlines suggested. In the weeks leading up to the sentencing, Jane Collins had tirelessly worked to uncover any potential leads or evidence that might exonerate David. Despite her efforts, the overwhelming weight of the prosecution's case and the public's perception had overshadowed her attempts to challenge the narrative. David remained in detention, awaiting his fate with a mixture of dread and resignation. One day, as Jane was sifting through the case files and reviewing trial transcripts, she stumbled upon an overlooked detail. Among the documents was a note from a janitor who had worked at Eleanor Harrington's mansion. The note mentioned that the janitor had witnessed a suspicious individual lingering near the mansion on the night of the robbery. This individual, described as a man with a dark coat and a distinctive limp, had been seen around the time of the theft. The note had been filed away without much attention during the initial investigation, overshadowed by the focus on David. Intrigued by this new lead, Jane decided to follow up on the information. She tracked down the janitor, a middle-aged man named Thomas Green, who was now working at a different location. Thomas, though initially hesitant, eventually agreed to share what he had seen that night. He described the individual in detail and mentioned that he had reported the incident to his supervisor, but his concerns had been dismissed as inconsequential at the time. Jane's discovery sparked a renewed sense of hope. She contacted the police department to reopen the investigation and provided them with Thomas Green's statement. The new lead brought a glimmer of optimism to David's defense, but the process of reinvestigating the case was slow and fraught with obstacles. The media's relentless focus on David's guilt and the political pressure to uphold the conviction complicated efforts to challenge the verdict. As Jane worked tirelessly to gather new evidence, David remained in his cell, grappling with his emotions and the gravity of his situation. The days blurred together as he awaited news of any developments in his case. His interactions with fellow detainees and the few visitors he received were marked by a profound sense of isolation. The prospect of execution loomed over him, and the hope for a reprieve seemed distant. Meanwhile, Eleanor Harrington continued to live her life under the shadow of the media spotlight. The initial euphoria surrounding David's conviction had faded, and cracks in the prosecution's case began to emerge. Eleanor's confidence in the justice system was unwavering, but whispers of doubt started to circulate among those who had once championed the conviction. As Jane pressed on with her investigation, she discovered another crucial detail. An anonymous source, who had been following the case closely, contacted her with information about a series of burglaries in the area. The source claimed that the burglaries were connected to a criminal gang known for its elaborate heists and had used sophisticated methods to evade capture. The gang's activities aligned with the timeline of the theft at Eleanor's mansion, suggesting a possible connection to the robbery. Jane pursued this lead, reaching out to law enforcement agencies and sharing the information with them. The investigation revealed that the gang had been involved in several high-profile robberies in the city, and their modus operandi matched the details of the theft at Eleanor's mansion. The revelation shifted the focus away from David and pointed toward a more plausible explanation for the robbery. The breakthrough in the investigation provided a ray of hope for David. Jane continued to work tirelessly, coordinating with law enforcement and building a case that challenged the initial conviction. The legal and media landscape began to shift as new evidence came to light, and the possibility of David's innocence gained traction. Despite the progress, the fight for David's exoneration was far from over. The legal system's inertia and the public's entrenched perception of David's guilt presented formidable challenges. The process of clearing David's name required navigating bureaucratic obstacles and overcoming the entrenched biases of those involved in the case. In the midst of the struggle, David found solace in the support of his legal team and the growing chorus of voices advocating for justice. The emotional toll of the ordeal was immense, but the renewed hope for exoneration provided a semblance of strength. As the investigation continued, David and Jane remained steadfast in their pursuit of truth, determined to uncover the full extent of the injustice that had befallen him. The stage was set for a dramatic turn of events as the investigation progressed. The new evidence and shifting focus provided a foundation for challenging the conviction and seeking justice for David. The battle was far from won, but the tide had begun to turn, and the path to redemption for David Miller was slowly taking shape. The unraveling mystery and the quest for justice. The investigation into David Miller's case took a critical turn as new evidence emerged, challenging the previously accepted narrative. Jane Collins, driven by her relentless quest for justice, had unearthed significant leads that cast doubt on David's guilt and suggested the involvement of a criminal gang in the robbery of Eleanor Harrington's mansion. As the weeks progressed, Jane's efforts to shed light on the true perpetrator intensified. The revelation about the criminal gang's involvement sparked a renewed vigor in the investigation. The gang, known for its elaborate heists and sophisticated methods, had been active in the area, and their modus operandi bore striking similarities to the theft at Eleanor's mansion. The new evidence suggested that David's conviction might have been a tragic miscarriage of justice. Jane worked closely with law enforcement to piece together the puzzle. She coordinated with detectives to track down the members of the gang and investigate their connections to the robbery. The process was arduous, involving extensive background checks, surveillance, and collaboration with other agencies. The complexity of the case and the urgency of time created a sense of mounting pressure on Jane and her team. Meanwhile, David Miller remained in a state of suspended reality within the confines of his prison cell. The initial shock of the verdict and the ensuing legal battle had left him emotionally drained. Despite the occasional visits from Jane and his legal team, the isolation and the looming threat of execution weighed heavily on him. Each day was a struggle, and the hope for exoneration seemed distant yet tangible. Eleanor Harrington, on the other hand, continued to live under the scrutiny of public opinion. The initial satisfaction of seeing David convicted had given way to an uneasy sense of unease. The shifting tides of the investigation and the growing questions surrounding the case cast a shadow over her previously unblemished reputation. Though Eleanor maintained her stance of certainty regarding David's guilt, the mounting evidence suggested otherwise. The media, once fervent in its support of David's conviction, began to shift its focus. News outlets reported on the new developments, highlighting the connection between the gang's activities and the robbery. Public opinion started to waver, with some individuals questioning the fairness of the initial trial and the integrity of the justice system. The growing scrutiny on Eleanor and the case's handling contributed to the shifting dynamics. Jane's breakthrough came when she managed to obtain crucial surveillance footage from nearby businesses on the night of the robbery. The footage captured a man fitting the description of the suspicious individual near Eleanor's mansion. The man's appearance and behavior aligned with the details provided by Thomas Green, the janitor. The footage suggested that the man was not David but someone who could potentially be linked to the gang. Jane's team analyzed the footage and cross-referenced it with known members of the gang. They identified a suspect with a history of similar crimes and a connection to the criminal network. The suspect, identified as Lucas Carter, had a documented history of high-profile heists and was known for his elaborate methods. Jane's team was able to establish a clear link between Lucas Carter and the gang's involvement in the robbery at Eleanor's mansion. With this new evidence, Jane filed a motion to reopen the case and present the new findings to the court. The legal process was intricate and fraught with challenges. The initial trial had been marked by significant procedural errors and biases, and the reopening of the case required navigating a complex legal landscape. Despite the hurdles, Jane remained resolute in her pursuit of justice for David. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the focus shifted from David's guilt to the investigation of the gang's activities. Law enforcement agencies conducted raids and arrests, apprehending several members of the criminal network. The evidence against Lucas Carter and his associates mounted, further corroborating Jane's claims and reinforcing the connection between the gang and the robbery. David's supporters, including advocacy groups and legal organizations, rallied behind him, pushing for a reconsideration of his case. Public opinion continued to shift, with growing calls for justice and accountability. The renewed scrutiny on the case highlighted the flaws in the initial investigation and the urgent need to rectify the wrongs done to David. The legal battle for David's exoneration became a focal point for discussions on justice and fairness. The case garnered national attention, with debates on the integrity of the justice system and the impact of media influence on high-profile trials. Jane's tireless efforts and the mounting evidence against the gang played a pivotal role in reshaping the narrative surrounding David's conviction. Despite the progress, the journey to exoneration was far from over. The legal system's complexities and the entrenched biases of those involved presented formidable challenges. The fight for David's innocence required navigating bureaucratic obstacles, overcoming skepticism, and advocating for a thorough review of the evidence. As the case continued to evolve, David's fate remained uncertain. The emotional toll of the ordeal was immense, but the renewed hope for justice provided a glimmer of strength. Jane and her team persevered, driven by a commitment to uncover the truth and secure justice for David. The stage was set for a dramatic turn of events as the investigation unfolded, and the path to redemption for David Miller continued to take shape. The turning tide and the pursuit of redemption. As the investigation into David Miller's case continued, the turning tide of public opinion and legal proceedings began to reshape the narrative. The mounting evidence against Lucas Carter and the criminal gang provided a glimmer of hope for David, who remained steadfast in his fight for exoneration. The intricate web of deceit, betrayal, and the quest for justice unfolded with increasing complexity, highlighting the deep flaws in the initial investigation and the relentless pursuit of truth. Jane Collins, now a pivotal figure in the case, devoted herself to unraveling the layers of corruption and misjudgment that had led to David's wrongful conviction. Her relentless pursuit of justice was fueled by a profound sense of duty and an unwavering belief in David's innocence. The media attention surrounding the case intensified, and public interest grew as new revelations emerged, shedding light on the truth behind the robbery and David's alleged involvement. The pivotal moment in the investigation came when Jane and her team uncovered critical evidence that had been overlooked during the initial trial. The discovery of a hidden ledger, linked to Lucas Carter and the gang, revealed detailed accounts of their criminal activities and a connection to the robbery at Eleanor Harrington's mansion. The ledger, obtained through meticulous research and coordination with law enforcement, provided concrete evidence that contradicted the narrative of David's guilt. The ledger, filled with intricate records and financial transactions, painted a vivid picture of the gang's operations and their involvement in high-profile heists. Jane's team worked diligently to analyze the ledger and cross-reference its contents with the details of the robbery. The ledger revealed a pattern of thefts and criminal activities that matched the description of the robbery at Eleanor's mansion, further implicating the gang and exonerating David. Simultaneously, Jane collaborated with forensic experts to re-examine the evidence presented during David's trial. The reanalysis of the physical evidence, including fingerprints and DNA samples, revealed inconsistencies with the original findings. The forensic experts concluded that the evidence did not conclusively link David to the robbery, reinforcing the argument for his innocence. The legal battle to reopen David's case was fraught with challenges. Jane filed a comprehensive motion to the court, presenting the new evidence and requesting a review of the case. The motion outlined the flaws in the initial trial, the evidence against the gang, and the procedural errors that had tainted the conviction. The legal team faced resistance from those who were reluctant to acknowledge the mistakes made in David's case, but their perseverance and the weight of the new evidence pushed the court to reconsider the verdict. During this time, David's supporters played a crucial role in advocating for his exoneration. Advocacy groups, legal organizations, and individuals who believed in his innocence rallied together, organizing campaigns and petitions to bring attention to the case. Their efforts amplified the call for justice and pressured the legal system to address the discrepancies in David's conviction. Eleanor Harrington, whose initial confidence in David's guilt had waned, faced increasing scrutiny and backlash. The media coverage focused on her role in the case, questioning her certainty and the integrity of the evidence presented against David. The mounting public pressure and the new revelations about the gang's involvement cast doubt on Eleanor's claims and forced her to confront the reality of her actions. As the court proceedings progressed, the focus shifted from David's guilt to the investigation of the criminal gang's activities. Law enforcement agencies conducted further raids and arrests, targeting members of the gang involved in the robbery. The crackdown on the gang resulted in the apprehension of several key figures, including Lucas Carter, who faced charges for his role in the heist and other criminal activities. The legal team's presentation of the new evidence and the growing support for David's exoneration created a sense of anticipation and hope. The court scheduled a hearing to review the motion and assess the validity of the new evidence. The hearing was a critical juncture in the case, and the outcome would determine whether David's conviction would be overturned. The courtroom was filled with tension as Jane and her team presented their case before the judge. The detailed presentation of the ledger, forensic reanalysis, and witness testimonies painted a compelling picture of David's innocence and the gang's culpability. The legal arguments were met with resistance from the opposing side, but the weight of the evidence and the compelling narrative of injustice created a powerful case for David's exoneration. As the hearing progressed, the judge listened attentively to the arguments and reviewed the evidence. The legal team's meticulous presentation and the growing public support added weight to their case. The courtroom atmosphere was charged with anticipation as the judge prepared to make a decision that could change David's fate. Outside the courtroom, David's supporters anxiously awaited the outcome of the hearing. The emotional toll of the case had been immense, but the renewed hope for justice provided a sense of purpose and determination. The fight for David's exoneration had become a symbol of the struggle for fairness and accountability within the justice system. The next few days were filled with uncertainty as the judge deliberated on the case. The legal team, David's supporters, and the public eagerly awaited the verdict. The resolution of the case would determine whether David's conviction would be overturned and whether justice would be served for the wrongs committed against him. As the case approached its climax, the focus on David's exoneration highlighted the broader issues of justice, fairness, and the impact of systemic flaws. The journey to redemption for David Miller was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring quest for truth in the face of adversity. Dijiste. The verdict and aftermath. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict on David Miller's case. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each person present acutely aware of the gravity of the moment. David's supporters, including his legal team and a growing number of advocates, held their breath, hopeful that justice would finally be served. The media had turned its spotlight on the case, amplifying the stakes and intensifying the scrutiny. The judge entered the courtroom, and the room fell silent. David, sitting with his legal team, was a picture of nervous hope, while Jane Collins, his lead attorney, tried to remain composed, her heart pounding in her chest. Eleanor Harrington and her legal representatives sat on the opposite side, their expressions a mix of anxiety and defiance. The tension was palpable as the judge took his seat and began to speak. After careful consideration of the evidence presented and the arguments made, this court has reached a decision regarding the motion for a new trial and the claims of wrongful conviction, the judge announced. His voice was steady but carried the weight of the moment. The evidence brought forth, including the newly discovered ledger and the reanalysis of forensic evidence, has led this court to conclude that the original conviction of David Miller was flawed. The procedural errors, combined with the compelling evidence of his innocence, necessitate a reassessment of the verdict. A collective gasp filled the courtroom as the judge's words sank in. Jane squeezed David's hand, her eyes glistening with tears of relief and triumph. The judge continued, "Therefore, this court overturns the original conviction of David Miller. Mr. Miller is to be released from incarceration immediately and the charges against him are to be formally dropped." The courtroom erupted into a mix of cheers and sobs, as David's supporters celebrated the long-awaited victory. David himself stood, overwhelmed with emotion, his face a mixture of joy and disbelief. Jane, her voice trembling with relief, embraced David, sharing in the moment of vindication. Eleanor Harrington, sitting in stunned silence, faced the reality of the repercussions for her actions. The media swarmed around her, demanding explanations and reactions to the overturning of David's conviction. Her role in the initial conviction and the subsequent scandal became a focal point of public scrutiny. The media's relentless coverage painted a complex picture of Eleanor, once a wealthy and influential figure now entangled in a scandal that marred her reputation. As David was released from prison, the media frenzy followed him closely. His return to freedom was marked by interviews and public appearances, where he spoke of his experiences and expressed gratitude for the support he received throughout his ordeal. The public sympathy for David grew, and his story became a powerful narrative of resilience and the fight for justice. The legal team's efforts and the support from advocacy groups garnered significant attention, highlighting the systemic issues within the justice system. David's case became a rallying point for discussions on wrongful convictions and the need for reform in legal procedures. The outcry for accountability and transparency in the legal system gained momentum, and David's case served as a catalyst for broader discussions on justice and fairness. In the weeks following David's release, Jane Collins and her team continued their advocacy work, using the platform created by David's case to push for reforms in the criminal justice system. They collaborated with legislators, organizations, and activists to address the flaws that had led to David's wrongful conviction. Their efforts aimed to prevent similar injustices in the future and to ensure that the system upheld the principles of fairness and accuracy. David, now free, faced the challenge of rebuilding his life and finding a new path forward. The trauma of his wrongful conviction and the years spent in prison left scars that would take time to heal. Yet, he approached this new chapter with a sense of purpose, determined to use his experience to advocate for others who faced similar struggles. As part of his journey towards healing, David engaged in public speaking and advocacy, sharing his story and raising awareness about the issues of wrongful convictions and the need for reform. His voice became a powerful tool for change, and he collaborated with organizations dedicated to criminal justice reform, using his platform to make a difference. The impact of David's case extended beyond his personal journey. It influenced the broader conversation about the flaws in the criminal justice system and the need for systemic change. The legal reforms and public awareness generated by the case contributed to efforts aimed at preventing future injustices and ensuring that the rights of the accused were protected. As David's story continued to unfold, he remained a symbol of hope and resilience. His journey from wrongful conviction to exoneration underscored the importance of perseverance and the pursuit of truth. The lessons learned from his case became a touchstone for discussions on justice, and David's experience served as a reminder of the power of determination and the quest for fairness in the face of adversity. In the end, David Miller's story was not just one of personal redemption, but a testament to the broader fight for justice and the ongoing efforts to reform a system in need of change. His legacy would endure as a beacon of hope for those who faced the shadows of injustice and a call to action for those committed to ensuring that the scales of justice remained balanced. The media frenzy and David's new life. The courtroom's jubilant atmosphere did not fade as David Miller's exoneration became a national sensation. Media outlets around the world scrambled to cover every detail of David's release and subsequent life. The media frenzy marked the beginning of David's new life, a life under the unrelenting scrutiny of public attention. David's first days of freedom. David's first days of freedom were a whirlwind of emotions and activities. The immediate relief of leaving the prison gates was tempered by the sudden onslaught of media attention. Reporters and photographers camped outside the prison, eager to capture every moment of his release. David, initially overwhelmed, was guided by his legal team and supporters through this chaotic period. The moment David stepped out of the prison, cameras flashed incessantly. He was greeted by Jane Collins, his lead attorney, who was instrumental in securing his release. Jane, with her usual composure, guided David through the media throng. David's emotions were raw. His eyes were red, and his face showed signs of exhaustion and relief. The journey from the prison to his new temporary residence was marked by a convoy of vehicles, ensuring David's privacy while navigating through the swarm of journalists. Once at his temporary home, David faced a new set of challenges. He had to adapt to a life he had been absent from for years. The comfort of a home, the freedom to move around without constraints, and the simple pleasures of everyday life were all tinged with the complexities of reintegrating into a world that had moved on without him. Public appearances and media coverage. The media's focus on David was intense. News channels, talk shows, and print media covered every aspect of his life. His re-entry into society, his interactions with family and friends, and his reactions to the overwhelming public support. Interviews with David were highly sought after, and he became a fixture on television screens and newspaper headlines. During his initial interviews, David spoke candidly about his experiences, the challenges of adjusting to freedom, and his feelings about the wrongful conviction. His emotional recounting of his time in prison and his reflections on the injustice he suffered resonated with many. Public sympathy and support for David grew exponentially as his story unfolded. The media coverage brought his case into the spotlight, leading to broader discussions on wrongful convictions and systemic reform. David used his platform to advocate for criminal justice reform. He spoke about the need for changes in the legal system to prevent future wrongful convictions. His interviews highlighted the flaws in the system, the importance of due process, and the necessity for transparency and accountability. David's personal story became a powerful tool for raising awareness and generating support for legislative changes. Rebuilding relationships and facing challenges. As David began to rebuild his life, he faced the difficult task of reconnecting with family and friends. His relationships had changed during his years of incarceration, and he had to navigate the complexities of re-establishing connections with people who had lived their lives without him. The process of reconciliation was fraught with emotional challenges, but it was also a crucial part of his journey towards healing. David's family played a significant role in his reintegration. His parents, siblings, and extended family were there to support him, but the strain of his wrongful conviction had left its mark. The relationships required effort and understanding as David and his loved ones navigated the process of healing and rebuilding trust. The support of his friends, both old and new, was a crucial part of David's transition. Many of his old friends rallied around him, offering emotional support and helping him adjust to his new reality. New friendships formed as David engaged with advocacy groups, activists, and supporters who were inspired by his story. David also faced practical challenges. The years of incarceration had left him with limited financial resources, and he had to navigate the complexities of managing his finances and planning for his future. The media attention and public scrutiny added another layer of difficulty, making it challenging for David to lead a normal life. Advocacy and reform efforts. David's release and the subsequent media coverage provided a platform for advocacy. He worked closely with legal experts, activists, and organizations dedicated to criminal justice reform. His case highlighted the need for systemic changes to prevent wrongful convictions and ensure that the legal system was fair and just. David became involved in various initiatives aimed at reforming the criminal justice system. He participated in legislative efforts to improve the accuracy of convictions and the transparency of legal procedures. His advocacy work focused on preventing future injustices and ensuring that the rights of the accused were protected. David's involvement in reform efforts extended beyond his personal experience. He collaborated with organizations that provided support to individuals who had been wrongfully convicted. His work helped raise awareness about the challenges faced by those who had suffered from the flaws in the justice system and contributed to efforts to address these issues. The impact of David's advocacy was significant. His efforts helped drive conversations about criminal justice reform and inspired others to join the fight for a more equitable legal system. The changes that resulted from his advocacy work contributed to a broader movement aimed at improving the justice system and preventing future wrongful convictions. Personal growth and new beginnings. As David settled into his new life, he focused on personal growth and new beginnings. The experience of wrongful conviction and incarceration had profoundly affected him, and he dedicated himself to healing and self-discovery. David sought therapy and counseling to address the emotional and psychological impact of his experience and to support his journey towards recovery. David also explored new opportunities and interests. He pursued activities and passions that he had been unable to engage in during his years of incarceration. The freedom to explore new avenues and experiences was a significant part of David's journey towards rebuilding his life and finding a sense of purpose. The support and encouragement from his family, friends, and advocates played a crucial role in David's personal growth. Their continued presence and support helped him navigate the complexities of his new life and provided a foundation for his ongoing healing and development. David's story of resilience and advocacy became a source of inspiration for many. His journey from wrongful conviction to freedom highlighted the importance of perseverance, the power of advocacy, and the need for reform in the criminal justice system. David's legacy extended beyond his personal experience, contributing to a broader movement for justice and change. The legal and social impact of David's story. The legal reforms and David's advocacy. David's exoneration and subsequent advocacy had a profound impact on the legal system and criminal justice reforms. His case highlighted critical flaws in the legal system, sparking debates and leading to significant changes aimed at preventing future wrongful convictions. David's legal team worked tirelessly to ensure that his story was not just a personal victory but a catalyst for systemic change. They collaborated with lawmakers, legal scholars, and advocacy groups to draft and promote legislation designed to address the issues exposed by David's case. One of the key reforms that emerged from David's advocacy was the implementation of stricter regulations for evidence handling and chain of custody. David's case had exposed weaknesses in how evidence was managed, leading to potential contamination and mishandling. The new regulations aimed to strengthen the protocols for evidence collection, storage, and processing, ensuring that evidence remained intact and reliable throughout legal proceedings. Additionally, David's case highlighted the need for improved oversight and accountability within the legal system. The introduction of independent review boards to investigate allegations of misconduct and systemic failures became a focal point of the reform efforts. These boards were designed to provide an impartial review of cases where wrongful convictions were suspected, helping to ensure that similar injustices could be addressed more effectively. David also advocated for the establishment of support programs for individuals who had been wrongfully convicted. These programs aimed to provide financial, psychological, and legal support to those who had suffered from wrongful imprisonment. By sharing his own experiences and working with organizations that offered support to exonerees, David helped to raise awareness about the unique challenges faced by individuals reintegrating into society after wrongful incarceration. Media influence and public perception. The media played a significant role in shaping public perception of David's case and the broader issues of criminal justice reform. The extensive coverage of David's story brought national and international attention to the flaws in the legal system and the experiences of those affected by wrongful convictions. David's story was featured in numerous documentaries, news reports, and talk shows. These media outlets explored various aspects of his case, including the legal proceedings, the personal impact on David and his family, and the broader implications for the justice system. The media's portrayal of David's case helped to generate public support for the reforms he was advocating and increased awareness of the issues at hand. The media coverage also contributed to a shift in public opinion regarding the criminal justice system. As David's story gained traction, there was a growing recognition of the need for reform and a heightened awareness of the potential for wrongful convictions. Public support for legislative changes and reform efforts grew, influenced by the emotional and compelling narrative of David's experience. The psychological impact on David. As David continued his advocacy work and adjusted to his new life, he faced ongoing psychological challenges. The experience of wrongful conviction and incarceration had left deep emotional scars, and David needed to address these issues as part of his healing process. David sought therapy and counseling to help him navigate the psychological aftermath of his experience. The therapy sessions provided a safe space for David to explore his feelings of anger, betrayal, and grief. Through these sessions, David worked on processing his trauma, developing coping strategies, and finding ways to move forward with his life. The support of his family and friends played a crucial role in David's psychological recovery. Their presence and encouragement provided a source of comfort and stability as David worked through the emotional challenges of reintegrating into society. The support network helped David to rebuild his self-esteem and regain a sense of normalcy. Community engagement and building a new life. David's journey from wrongful conviction to freedom was not just about personal recovery, but also about making a positive impact on the community. He became actively involved in various community initiatives, using his platform to address social issues and promote positive change. David participated in community outreach programs, speaking engagements, and charity events aimed at raising awareness and supporting various causes. His involvement in these activities allowed him to connect with others who had faced similar challenges and to contribute to efforts that made a difference in the lives of individuals and families. The transition from a high-profile case to community engagement presented its own set of challenges. David had to navigate the complexities of maintaining privacy while remaining active in public life. Balancing the demands of advocacy with the need for personal space required careful management and support from his team. David's commitment to community engagement also involved collaborating with local organizations and non-profits. He worked with groups focused on criminal justice reform, providing first-hand insights and contributing to efforts aimed at improving the legal system and supporting those affected by wrongful convictions. The legacy of David's advocacy. David's story and advocacy efforts left a lasting legacy in the realm of criminal justice reform. The changes brought about by his case contributed to a more transparent and accountable legal system, helping to prevent future wrongful convictions and improve the overall integrity of the justice system. The impact of David's advocacy extended beyond legal reforms. His personal story of resilience and courage became a source of inspiration for many. David's journey highlighted the importance of perseverance, the power of advocacy, and the need for systemic change. The ongoing efforts to address the issues raised by David's case continued to influence public discourse and drive legislative action. David's work helped to pave the way for future reforms and provided a model for others seeking to make a difference in the field of criminal justice. David's legacy was marked by his dedication to improving the legal system, supporting those affected by wrongful convictions, and contributing to the broader movement for justice and change. His story served as a reminder of the power of advocacy and the impact of individual actions in shaping a more just and equitable society. David's journey of redemption and healing. The personal impact of David's wrongful conviction. David's journey through wrongful conviction and eventual exoneration was deeply transformative. As he navigated life post-incarceration, the psychological scars from his wrongful imprisonment remained a constant challenge. Despite being declared innocent, the emotional trauma of spending years behind bars lingered. David's experiences during his time in prison had a profound effect on his mental and emotional state. The harsh realities of incarceration, combined with the wrongful nature of his conviction, led to a complex emotional landscape. David grappled with feelings of betrayal, confusion, and anger, and these emotions often surfaced in various aspects of his life. To address these challenges, David sought professional help. Therapy and counseling became essential components of his recovery process. He worked with therapists who specialized in trauma and post-incarceration issues. The therapy sessions provided David with tools and strategies to manage his emotions, cope with his past experiences, and build a new future. David's personal healing was not just about addressing the emotional impact of his wrongful conviction. It also involved rebuilding his sense of self and restoring his relationships. The support of his family and friends was crucial during this period. Their unwavering belief in David's innocence and their commitment to supporting him through his struggles played a significant role in his recovery. Rebuilding relationships and trust. One of the most challenging aspects of David's reintegration into society was rebuilding relationships that had been strained or severed during his imprisonment. The years of wrongful incarceration had taken a toll on his connections with family, friends, and colleagues. Rebuilding trust and mending these relationships required patience, understanding, and open communication. David made a conscious effort to reconnect with those he had been distanced from. He reached out to family members and friends, expressing his gratitude for their support and seeking to repair any damage caused by his absence. The process of rebuilding these relationships was gradual and often emotional, but David's sincerity and efforts to make amends were well received. In addition to personal relationships, David also focused on rebuilding his professional network. He reached out to former colleagues, mentors, and business contacts, explaining his situation and seeking to re-establish connections. The support of his professional network was instrumental in helping David regain his footing and move forward with his career. Advocacy and public engagement. David's commitment to advocacy and public engagement was a central part of his post-incarceration life. He used his platform to raise awareness about wrongful convictions and the need for criminal justice reform. His involvement in advocacy work became a way for him to channel his experiences into positive change. David participated in various public speaking engagements, conferences, and panel discussions. He shared his story and insights with audiences, highlighting the systemic issues that led to his wrongful conviction and the importance of reform. David's personal testimony resonated with many, and his advocacy efforts helped to drive conversations about justice and accountability. In addition to speaking engagements, David also worked with nonprofit organizations and advocacy groups focused on criminal justice reform. He collaborated with these organizations to support legislative efforts, raise funds, and promote initiatives aimed at preventing wrongful convictions and supporting those affected by the justice system. The role of media and public perception. The media played a significant role in shaping public perception of David's case and his post-incarceration life. The coverage of David's exoneration and subsequent advocacy efforts brought attention to the broader issues of wrongful convictions and criminal justice reform. David's story was featured in documentaries, news reports, and interviews. The media coverage provided a platform for David to share his experiences and advocate for change. It also helped to raise awareness about the flaws in the legal system and the need for reform. The media's portrayal of David's story was not without its challenges. David had to navigate the complexities of public attention and manage the impact of media coverage on his personal life. Balancing the demands of public engagement with the need for privacy required careful management and support from his team. Building a legacy of change. As David continued his advocacy work and engaged with the community, he focused on building a lasting legacy of change. His efforts were aimed at creating a more just and equitable legal system, supporting those affected by wrongful convictions, and contributing to the broader movement for criminal justice reform. David's legacy was marked by his dedication to improving the legal system and supporting individuals who had experienced similar injustices. He worked to ensure that his story and advocacy efforts had a lasting impact on the criminal justice system and on the lives of those affected by wrongful convictions. In addition to his advocacy work, David also sought to create opportunities for others to get involved in the movement for justice. He encouraged individuals to learn about the issues, support reform efforts, and contribute to positive change in their communities. David's legacy was a testament to his resilience, courage, and commitment to justice. His journey from wrongful conviction to advocacy served as an inspiration to many and highlighted the power of individual actions in driving systemic change. Personal fulfillment and future aspirations. As David looked toward the future, he remained focused on his personal and professional aspirations. His experiences had shaped his goals and aspirations, and he was determined to use his platform and influence to continue making a difference. David's future aspirations included expanding his advocacy efforts, working on new projects, and continuing to support the causes he was passionate about. He was committed to using his experiences to drive positive change and to contribute to the ongoing efforts to improve the criminal justice system. David's journey had been marked by challenges and triumphs, and he remained dedicated to creating a better future for himself and for others. His story of resilience, advocacy, and personal growth continued to inspire and impact those around him. David's legacy and final reflections. The continued impact of David's advocacy. David's work in advocating for justice and criminal reform continued to gain momentum as he deepened his involvement in the cause. Over time, his influence extended beyond public speaking and media appearances. He became a key figure in several high-profile reform initiatives and played a pivotal role in shaping new policies designed to prevent wrongful convictions and improve the overall integrity of the criminal justice system. David's advocacy efforts were not limited to his own experiences. He began working closely with lawmakers and legal experts to draft and promote legislation aimed at addressing systemic flaws in the justice system. His input was instrumental in the development of new policies that included measures for better forensic practices, improved legal representation for the indigent, and more stringent oversight of police conduct and prosecutorial decisions. One of the major achievements during this period was David's involvement in the creation of a nationwide coalition of advocates for criminal justice reform. This coalition brought together individuals and organizations from diverse backgrounds, all united by a shared commitment to addressing issues within the justice system. David's role in this coalition was not just as a participant but as a leader who helped to shape the agenda and coordinate efforts across various sectors. Public and institutional recognition. David's tireless work in the realm of criminal justice reform did not go unnoticed. His efforts earned him recognition from various institutions and organizations dedicated to human rights and legal reform. He received several prestigious awards and honors, including accolades from legal associations, human rights organizations, and philanthropic foundations. These awards were not merely ceremonial but symbolized the broader impact of David's work. They represented a recognition of his contributions to advancing justice and advocating for those who had suffered similar injustices. The awards also provided David with additional platforms to speak about his experiences and the ongoing need for reform. Despite the accolades, David remained humble and focused on the mission. He used the recognition to further amplify the message of reform and to highlight the stories of others who had been wrongfully convicted. David's commitment to the cause remained unwavering, and he continued to dedicate his time and resources to advancing the agenda of justice reform. Personal growth and new beginnings. As David's public life flourished, he also focused on his personal growth and new beginnings. His experiences had profoundly changed him, and he sought to find balance in his life between his advocacy work and his personal well-being. He began exploring new interests and passions, using his newfound freedom to engage in activities that brought him joy and fulfillment. David took up hobbies that he had previously not had the time or opportunity to pursue. He found solace in creative pursuits such as writing and art, which provided him with an outlet for self-expression and reflection. These activities became an important part of his routine and contributed to his overall sense of well-being. In addition to personal interests, David also made efforts to reconnect with his family and friends. The journey through wrongful conviction and advocacy had strained some relationships, and he worked diligently to rebuild those connections. Family gatherings and social interactions became a source of support and joy, and David cherished the moments spent with loved ones. The establishment of a foundation. Building on his commitment to justice and reform, David decided to establish a foundation dedicated to supporting those affected by wrongful convictions. The foundation aimed to provide financial assistance, legal support, and emotional counseling to individuals who had been wrongfully convicted and their families. The establishment of the foundation was a significant milestone in David's journey. It was a tangible expression of his desire to make a lasting impact and to help others who had experienced similar injustices. The foundation's work included funding legal battles, providing scholarships for legal education, and offering support services to help individuals reintegrate into society after exoneration. David's foundation quickly gained traction and support from various sectors. It partnered with legal organizations, advocacy groups, and community leaders to expand its reach and effectiveness. The foundation's success was a testament to David's vision and dedication to creating positive change in the lives of those affected by wrongful convictions. Reflections on the journey. As David looked back on his journey from wrongful conviction to advocacy and personal fulfillment, he reflected on the profound lessons learned along the way. His experiences had taught him about the resilience of the human spirit, the power of justice, and the importance of standing up for what is right. David's reflections were marked by a deep sense of gratitude for the support he received from family, friends, and advocates. He recognized the collective effort that had contributed to his success and the broader movement for justice reform. David's journey was not just about his own experiences, but about the many individuals who had been part of the larger effort to address systemic issues in the criminal justice system. In his reflections, David also expressed a commitment to continue advocating for justice and to support the ongoing efforts to create a fair and equitable legal system. He recognized that the fight for justice was ongoing and that there was still much work to be done. David's legacy was built on a foundation of resilience, courage, and a steadfast commitment to making a difference. A final message. David's final message to the world was one of hope, resilience, and the power of individual actions to effect change. He encouraged others to believe in the possibility of a just society and to actively participate in efforts to improve the criminal justice system. David's story served as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to overcome challenges and make a meaningful impact. David's journey was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the importance of standing up for justice. His legacy would continue to inspire and influence those who sought to create a better world, and his contributions to the fight for justice would leave a lasting impact on the lives of many. As David's story came to a close, it left behind a legacy of hope, resilience, and a commitment to creating a fairer and more just world for future generations.